France is erupting in protests over fuel taxes.
Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
They came out wearing reflective safety vests, blocking traffic, and demanding that Emmanuel Macron, well, we're not sure what they're demanding he do exactly, but the yellow vests, as they're called, are not shy about expressing their dissatisfaction with the direction of their country, and about 2/3 of the French people support them. Hey everyone, welcome to Plain English once again. I'm Jeff, and JR is the producer. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us a note. We can be reached at Jeff, Jeff, at plainenglish.com or JR at plainenglish.com. Today is episode number 111. So the transcript can be found at plainenglish.com/111. Are you getting your Christmas shopping done? It's already mid-December. I'm starting to browse online. I stopped by a shop in my neighborhood today to pick up a few gifts. I think I have a couple of ideas for people on my shopping list. But what happens to me is I have all these great Christmas gift ideas in like June. And then the time comes to actually do my shopping and I draw a blank. I don't know what to get. There are plenty of presents I could give myself, but that's another story. To get a great Christmas present, you need to have your finger on the pulse of everyone on your shopping list. And if you don't know what that means, just keep listening. That's because the phrase we're going to talk about in the second half of the program is to have your finger on the pulse of something. So listen for that in the main content of the program. Ready to get started? A spontaneous protest movement has broken out in France. They're called the Yellow Vests, after the reflective safety vests that you wear when working in traffic. They originally came out to protest new fuel taxes, but the movement has expanded to encompass all manner of dissatisfaction with France's government, and especially its President Emmanuel Macron. It started back on November 17th, when hundreds of thousands of people came out to block traffic in more than 2,000 locations around France. The people were mostly from rural areas and were mostly middle class. They were protesting the French government's increase in the fuel tax by 7.6 euro cents per liter for diesel fuel and 3.9 cents per liter for unleaded gas. The majority of the price of fuel in France is taxes. Though that tax has been in place for a while, an additional tax increase was scheduled to come into force in January. The latest increase was a tipping point for middle-class France, especially those who can't take the metro, ride bicycles, or use ride-sharing apps. Their view is that the new taxes, which are part of the president's environmental agenda, are a luxury that city people can afford, but that the middle class in France's rural areas cannot. A video posted to Facebook by a singer from Brittany summarizes this view. The singer, Jacqueline Marode, says that Macron doesn't care about the costs that commuters outside the city face, since he and his ministers get to work in government-funded cars. She said, "I have no choice but to take my car, whether it pollutes or not." Her 4-minute video attracted millions of views. Macron is the picture of French elite. He went to the finest schools and started his career as an investment banker. He started his own political party and bucked the world trend toward nationalism and extreme parties by campaigning as a centrist and winning big. Since taking office in a burst of energy and youthful exuberance, he passed a series of labor market, educational, and budget reforms intended to make France more economically competitive and flexible in the modern world. He has also shined on the world stage, taking a leadership role in the European Union, at the United Nations, and in promoting the International Paris Climate Accord. He delivered a speech marking the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I by criticizing Donald Trump as the American president sat in the audience. This globe-trotting has won him praise from international leaders and from many in Paris, but it quickly became apparent that the internationalist president did not have his finger on the pulse of his own country. He scolded a teenager for not addressing him with the proper respect when an elderly citizen said that the government was crushing people by planning to increase fuel taxes further. The French president lectured the man on the need to change rather than listening to his concerns. He has been branded as the president for the rich. Just days after Macron's public rebuke to Trump, the protests broke out in the French countryside. To make matters worse, Macron flew to Buenos Aires for an international conference on the weekend of the biggest protests, leaving his prime minister to deal with the crisis back home. At first, the government's position was that it would not back down on its plan to raise fuel taxes further in January. But they soon abandoned that position, saying they'd delay the increased fuel taxes by 6 months and potentially delay it further if global oil prices get too high. Days later, they canceled the tax outright. At best, the reversal made the government look weak and indecisive, At worst, it could encourage more protests if people think the president can be pushed around by a mob on the street. The protests, meanwhile, have expanded from the countryside to the city, and they have taken on an ugly form. Paris's Arc de Triomphe was vandalized. Protesters wrote, "Macron resignation" in black spray paint. Last weekend, a dark combination of tear gas and smoke hung over France's beautiful Champs-Elysée. The city's main shopping corridor was littered with burned cars and broken glass from smashed windows. A stuffed figure of Macron was strapped into a makeshift guillotine. Ouch. The government closed the Eiffel Tower and other tourist sites as a precaution. The Yellow Vest protests have expanded far beyond simple unhappiness with a new tax. The message of the protesters appears incoherent, mostly because they have no real leader. Many are against the fuel taxes. Others demand the resignation of the president. Some are vehemently anti-capitalist. But all of them seem to agree that Macron is the president of the rich. Anywhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the French people support the Yellow Vest protesters, probably because they support the idea that Macron has lost touch with the French people. Since the Yellow Vests are leaderless and don't have a specific agenda, people support them as a way of opposing the president. As one protester put it, French society is like a pyramid. Macron is sitting at the top, and they want him to know what it's like at the bottom. I certainly understand the sentiments of the protesters watching their own costs rise as their president lectures them about the environment. And I understand that a good street riot is part of the French tradition. But boy, that is a sad sight to see fires burning and tear gas all over the Champs-Elysées. As we get close to Christmas time, some of you may have travel planned. If you're in Mexico, that might involve a long bus ride. For some of you, it might mean flights or train trips or even long car trips. One great way to pass the time during holiday travel is by listening to an audiobook. And you can listen in English, if you're brave, or in your own language. There are audiobooks in Spanish, Portuguese, German, Italian, all the great languages of the world. Hey, French, if you need to put on your headphones and block out the sound of the protesters outside your window, what better way to do it than with an audiobook? The Harry Potter books are available in French, and even one of JR's favorite books, The Little Prince, is available in French as it was originally written. I'm sure that one's in all the languages. And listen, you've probably heard me say you can get a free audiobook by going to plainenglish.com/book, B-O-O-K, and signing up for a free trial membership to Audible. That's still true like always, but they've got a great holiday offer going on now. So when you go to plainenglish.com/book, you will see an offer for 3 months of Audible for about $7 per month. So you can sign up, get your free audiobook for being a trial member, which you can keep forever without paying anything. And then you can be a member for 3 months and get 1 audiobook a month. So after 3 months, you'll have gotten 4 books and paid only $21. That's a great value. These audiobooks are like 8, 10, 12 hours each. That's enough for you to take the train from Paris to Marseille and back, or to even drive from one side of Sao Paulo to the other. plainenglish.com/book, B-O-O-K. Even if you don't want to subscribe at the discount rate, you can still get a free trial, pay nothing, and keep 1 audiobook forever. plainenglish.com/book. Okay, today I want to tell you what it means to have your finger on the pulse of something. Earlier, you heard that Emmanuel Macron did not have his finger on the pulse of the French middle class. You could probably tell from the context that he didn't know what people were thinking, what was going on in their lives. And that is true. And your pulse is like your heartbeat. And when you want to measure the heartbeat of a person, you can press your finger or 2 fingers on that person's wrist. Right on the inside of a person's wrist, you can feel his or her heartbeat or pulse. When you have your finger on the pulse of something, then it means you are very familiar with everything that's going on right up to the latest minute. When Macron was campaigning, he certainly had his finger on the pulse of public opinion. He won a big victory. But he didn't really have his finger on the pulse of the French middle class lately, the people in the countryside, right? What kinds of people have their finger on the pulse of public opinion in addition to politicians? I would think anyone who conducts opinion polls probably has their finger on the pulse of what's going on around a given country or state. Journalists usually have a specialty, right? It's called their beat in English. They might cover business, science, the environment, local politics, crime, whatever. A good journalist has her finger on the pulse of her beat, her specialty. She has to know everything about what's going on. Business leaders, too. One thing that's popular these days is fast fashion. Chains like H&M have their finger on the pulse of what people want, and they can bring new items to their stores much faster than traditional retailers can. That's why stores like Zara, Topshop, and H&M are called fast fashion. They can have their finger on the pulse of their customers, and as soon as a new trend emerges, they can have that trend on the shelves, on the racks, really quickly. The coach of a sports team has to have his finger on the pulse of the team. What are they thinking? How can we come together and train as hard as possible to win the next game? A teacher should have his or her finger on the pulse of the classroom. You want to know your students' mindsets so they learn the most possible in the next lesson. Okay, that's it for today's Plain English. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to join our email list by going to plainenglish.com/mail. If you join the list, you'll get email updates from JR and me. We'll send you links to English articles on the main topics of every episode, and you'll also get one additional word or phrase explained in plain English. That's twice a week. So over the course of a year, you'll get an additional 104 words and phrases in addition to the 104 words and phrases you hear on the show. And that's all totally free right to your email inbox by going to plainenglish.com/mail. JR and I will be back on Monday. Have a great weekend.